Welcome to My Messy Beautiful Life, Season 2, Episode 12. This is my first time trying to record a podcast at the same time as making a video. Now, I believe there's tools you can purchase to do this simultaneously. There's probably something you can hook up to your cell phone or something of that nature, but I don't have the money or the items at this time. So what I did is I hooked a microphone up to my laptop, hit record at the very same moment as I have my cell phone recording myself. And the cell phone, I don't have a way to hold it, so I have it on top of a plastic bucket, and then I couldn't find a way to hold it straight up, so I have it leaning on a clay sculpture that I made in college that says Jesus and has a cross. And so that is how I am recording this quick podcast, to see how it works and just put it out there. And the one thing that will be different if I'm doing a video like this is that I can't stop. So as I record a podcast, typically I will record it and I'll pause. So when you have those brief breaks in the podcast, it's when I've paused it or I've edited the audio. If I start recording it and doing it live and making videos, then it will make it a lot harder for me to edit the audio and adjust it accordingly. And I'm not sure what I think about that. So let me know if you enjoy me recording videos live, because I can put them onto YouTube so you can watch them. I can also put the podcast out on YouTube as just an audio file and put some pictures. That's another option for me. So I would love to hear from you. So send me a message. You can send it to mymessybeautifullife at gmail.com, and then I'll be able to read your email and I can try to adjust accordingly, because at the end of the day, this podcast is for you. It's to encourage you and to help you not feel alone and to hear stories and to entertain. And so it's whatever way that works for you. I want to be accommodating you as my customer, my audience, my friend, my people. So let me know, and then I will adjust accordingly. So today I wanted to talk about, I don't know if you've ever had that where you feel like a wave is coming and it crashes into you. Have you ever been in like a wave pool, like in different places here in Minnesota and Wisconsin, and I'm sure all over the place? They have these pools you can go into, and then the water comes in these waves again and again and again, which is really fun because you can jump over the waves and swim into the waves. But if you get off on the rhythm, those waves, they just crash into you over and over again. And when you try to jump out of the water, you start to drown because you can't get up above that wave. And that's why it makes me pretty nervous to do it with my kids, unless I'm there watching them closely, because I can't imagine being a lifeguard trying to save those kids, because there's so much going on in those, wave pools. But just like how a wave comes crashing, I don't know if any of you listening have had it where you kind of get hit with something hard in life, and then another thing in life, and then another thing in life, and another thing in life, and it starts to feel like you're in one of those wave pools or in the ocean and you're off rhythm, and it just crashes again and again and again, and you're so overwhelmed and you're like holding tight, like you just hold tight for that next wave to crash into you, and you don't know when it's going to come, and your anxiety rises as a result of that. And I tell you, there's been multiple times in my life where I feel like those waves just keep crashing again and again. And I just went through a season of that, and you kind of hold your breath. But what do you do during those times? What do you do to manage when those waves of life crash into you again and again and again? How do you handle that? If you're not in that season right now, how do you prepare? Because I feel like it happens to all of us sooner or later, where those waves will crash into us. And do you have the friendships in place? Do you have the relationships in place? Do you have people you can call on when things are hard? How do you handle it? So for me personally, when those waves come and crash again and again, I stand on my faith. And so I believe in God, and I believe that He loves us, and I believe that He's there in the midst of it. And sometimes it's easy to get angry at God, which He can handle it. And, I talk with Him and I'm like, God, I can't take any more. And I'm overwhelmed and I can't take another thing. And when those waves crash, I just look to him. And then sometimes I look to, where are his blessings in the middle of that chaos? Or I know and I have faith that on the other side of that, I'll be able to see the outcome, the good, or sometimes I might not see the outcome, but there will be good on the other side, even if I can't see it. So I don't know, an example of that would be back in the day, my very first husky, who I loved very, very much, he had been very healthy and good, and he would catch he'd catch a frisbee in the air, 4 paws off the ground, super healthy, super energetic, amazing dog. Loved him so much, like a child. And all of a sudden, he started slowing down. It was right after my son was born. And I was just getting into the rhythm of being a mom, and life was good, and I was feeling happy. And all of a sudden, I noticed that he was having a hard time getting up. And I started to sob. And I just knew in my very core that something was wrong. So I took him to the vet, and they did a blood draw, and his blood cell count was so low that he shouldn't have been able to walk. He was so sick. So we brought him to a place, scanned him. They couldn't figure out what was wrong. So I just said, what are our treatment options? And they said prednisone. So I started the prednisone, and it was the worst week of my life because it was like I'd see him improve, but then he wouldn't improve, and he just spiraled. And so at the end of the week, I knew it was time to help him over the Rainbow Bridge because he stayed out overnight in a rainstorm and wouldn't come in. He could hardly walk, and it was time to go. And it was awful. I sobbed and cried, and it was the worst thing ever. Now, at the time, I couldn't see past that because it was so horrible. But the good that came out of it, there were several really good things that came out of it. One is that I don't know that he would have been very good with kids. I don't know that he would have been able to handle the chaos of it, and that would have been horrible. Second of all, I ended up making a very, very good friend. I call it my last gift from Champ, because 2 doors down there was a person who I hardly knew at all, and when Champ passed away, I told her about it, and she was an avid lover of dogs, just like me. And so what happened was, when I lost my dog, we started hanging out, and we talked, and she ended up losing her dog, and together we mourned and processed that, and she became one of my very best friends, and I was in her wedding as a backup bridesmaid, and it was just a tremendous relationship that came out of that. And then I got my next dog, who was Lumpy, and Lumpy was the absolute perfect dog for our family, for having a newborn and small children. He was just the best, and we wouldn't have gotten him if we hadn't lost Champ. And not only that, but Lumpy had a hard time adjusting to our family and our new life. And my friend Sarah, who is my new friend, she had a dog. She ended up getting a puppy. And then Lumpy found a connection with her dog, and they became best friends. And that's what helped us getting through that really hard part of getting a new dog. And it was just perfect. It was the perfect thing. But getting there through that crashing wave was the absolute worst. It was so horrible. I was just torn up inside. I couldn't find the good. The other thing is that sometimes when the waves of life come crashing and hitting us again and again and again, we can look for rays of sunshine in the midst of it. And sometimes it's super hard, and sometimes you see it after the fact. You remember that these things happen that are good. So you look through and you find the good in the bad, if that makes sense. So an example of that would be, my dog was really, really sick. So many dog stories. And I had to put an IV in him. And I didn't know if I could do it. So I just put a message out on Facebook and asked if anybody could help me. Well, somebody that I worked with 20 years ago, who I've only seen one time in that 20 years, she messaged me, and she came over to my house and she helped me put that IV in. Now, it was a really hard time to have to put an IV in my dog, but having her there was amazing. So you just never know who's going to come and show up in those dark times of your life. And I also have wonderful friends that I know I can call on. and any time, and they just show up. And I've done podcasts on making good friends and finding good friends, but part of that is being a very good friend yourself. And so you need to be able to be vulnerable. You need to be able to trust. You need to be available. You need to make time for people, and you need to help them as well. So when you do those things for other people, it builds those relationships and those bonds. And in your time of need, when those waves are crashing on you, they will be there for you, just like you're there for them. So that's what I wanted to tell you about today. I hope you have a wonderful day, and thank you for listening to My Messy Beautiful Life. And I forgot one other thing I wanted to tell you guys about, which is I always say to subscribe. And I realized I don't even know how to subscribe, which sounds ridiculous, but So what I did is I went out onto the different platforms and I looked up My Messy Beautiful Life, and you like it, and that's how you subscribe to it, is just by liking it. And then what happens is you end up getting like notifications when there's a new podcast that's released. And I'm going to try to start releasing and recording at least once a week, because I was told by actually a person that came to fix in my house that if you release it more often, then it starts to be able to be available to more people. And I want people to be encouraged and to listen to the podcast. So because I'm doing it for all of you. And so I'm going to try to release more often. And then I also created my very own branding this week, which you'll see on the podcast. And I'd love to hear your feedback on that as well. So that's out there for you to evaluate. And I appreciate all your support as I've been recording My Messy Beautiful Life.